And we're live for the mega review of all the non-semi-finalists. 6 teams to talk about, plenty of chatter. Can't believe it's already been 50 days since we spoke about all the teams in the mega preview and how I was expecting Netherlands to make it to the knockouts. Unfortunately, not to be the case. Gurkirat will be joining us in a bit. Of course, we've got Nikhil Bhai right now. Nikhil Bhai, kaise ho? Especially after yesterday's chatter around, IPL and all of that jazz.
No, good vibes everywhere. I know a lot of people are very busy visualizing कि कल क्या होगा, कौन टॉस जीतेगा, क्या करेगा. But I think the best way to distract yourself is by talking something else. And there is still a lot to talk to about the teams that could not make it to the knockouts. So, yep, plenty to talk and discuss.
Definitely. I mean, in terms of chatter about tomorrow's game, it couldn't really get better. It couldn't get more intense, more chatty in terms of how Mumbai is right now. Even today, I like everywhere I could just see people talking about the game tomorrow. I could just overhear conversations. Great to see, of course, India and New Zealand. We know what happened the last time the two teams met, in an ICC event knockout game. So, yeah, fingers crossed. Let's hope India does do well there. Let's quickly move on to the first team right now since Gurkirat Paji is also not here. So, of course, we're going from 10th to the 4th position in terms of the teams that we'll be reviewing today. So, first, but definitely not the worst, sorry, is Netherlands. Unfortunately, finished 10th, something most people would have predicted before the tournament began. So, that way, not a lot of surprise. But again, something we've discussed before, they definitely have gained a lot from the tournament, a tournament where they will be going out of with their heads held high. They had 2 wins, one against South Africa, one against Bangladesh. The Bangladesh one was again fantastic. The most recent win, very clinical chase. All of us remember how good they were. I mean, sorry, chase क्या बोलता हूँ भाई? Again, मतलब पता नहीं क्या चल रहा है भाई. Very clinical defense. It almost seemed like Bangladesh didn't even deserve to be a part of the Champions Trophy setup. After that game, unfortunately, it wasn't to be the case because they ended up losing their next 3 games. And who can forget the game against South Africa, man? Like that game in Dharamshala, a game to remember for most people. I don't think I'll ever be, able to forget the memories of this game. I was on live blog that day. We'll never forget what happened that day. How Scott Edwards led the side, how everyone chipped in, when it came to the ball, and how the low order in particular. I remember Fondemov, that cameo that he played that day. Oh man, that was ridiculous. We'll definitely talk a lot more about, not just the game, Netherlands team as well. Nikhil bhai, let's start with you. In terms of Netherlands, the team and what you expected of them, how would you rate them? How good were they this time around?
No, very good. I think we kept talking highly about how prepared they were in terms of what to do when and to whom. And it is good to see that because, again, good to see also that paper coming out very often because that's what you need. You have to use data well, and they did use it well. There were areas where you felt that, there were things that they could have done better. You talk about the Afghanistan game, the runouts, those are controllables where they'll feel they missed out. But from an overall lens, I expected 2-3 wins. They got two. One against a surprise opponent, which I have no problem because they made it to the knockouts. तो वो मेरे को दिक्कत नहीं है. But it just showed that there is so much more room and there is so much more skill out there for Netherlands to make the most of. And for them to do that without having almost any cricket in this format of the game just speaks highly of the skills that are there. I think they were slightly let down by the batting up top, but again, conditions were such that you needed, inform people up top, and didn't happen. But they gave enough signs for people to trust them, to play them more, so that the 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 competition keeps growing. You see more people coming in, more teams getting to that stage where everybody can beat everybody, and that is a great place to be in.
Definitely. In fact, even one of the threats we'd spoken about during the mega preview for Netherlands was the fact that they hadn't played enough ODIs entering the World Cup, and they hadn't
Yeah,
played enough games in Asian conditions. In the last
yeah,
6-7 years, they hardly played any games across formats. And Nikhil
yeah.
Bhai, sort of taking that into context, were your expectations met in terms of how the team fared in the World Cup?
Yeah, I'd say so. Because as I said, I was expecting 2 to 3 wins. And again, I mean, we've seen them enough in qualifiers to have that belief. Ki yes, they can do it. They still have the resources to even beat the top sides. Something that their coach said, which stays with you, is they were good, but they just now need to get good for a longer period of time, and that's their next challenge. But now they also have a lot of experience, a lot of exposure to such conditions, so that The next time they come around playing something, I'm sure they'll be much better prepared because they have done a lot of things right. Now it's about using this experience and then getting even better. Yes, as we will talk about it in terms of their batting, I think I expected a lot more out of the batting. I think the bowling really took them through in most games, which again just tells you that there is so much more that you can look forward to.
100%. The batting definitely has a lot of room for improvement, but again, that's only sort of to be looked at positively. Definitely
Yeah,
not a harsh critique of what
yeah.
they did this time around. But again, just focusing on Netherlands in terms of what we can expect from them going forward. Let's just look at a few points that we had in mind. Firstly, of course, Nikhil Bhai, in terms of injury management, given the kind of injuries that they had coming into the tournament, again, they were missing several first 11 options. The likes of Fred Klaassen, Tim Pringle, both of them not being available, both of them key members of their bowling attack. And this was the case even during the qualifiers, where because of the overlap with the county season, they didn't have a lot of their first 11 players, including Van Meekeren. I'm forgetting a few other names, but 100%. So, how do you sort of look at this playing out? Because again, injury management is uh, one of those intangibles, so to say. You can't really measure it, you can't really sort of quantify it in number. But how do you think they can rectify it going forward?
So I think it is something that we have discussed about all teams that they start doing post this World Cup, that they will start to have separate pools, and that's where they can help manage people and manage their workload better in terms of who is playing where and what. Because all those county deals, every deal is important for them. You have to be very mindful of the fact that you can't just really say कि भाई they went for county, so how do they not? It's not as straightforward for them as it may be for others. So hopefully, the more they get to play, the more better they'll be in a situation to take those calls. We also heard about from the coach that they've had a few teams inquire about it. So the next point that you had is something that is going to help them grow better as a unit. That the more they play, the more people send their sides to Netherlands or get them coming over. It will help them even identify people for different formats. Okay, T20 format ke liye, this is the pool that we want to. For the ODI format, this is the pool that we're looking to build. And that will really go a long way in terms of managing people, because effectively who's playing what will lead to a lot of injuries or will lead to avoiding them. So I think if they get that bit planned, hopefully more teams will ensure that they get to play, because it is and it has to be done. I don't think it should be something that they should think about. Okay, play as many people as you can in terms of this is for the top four sides. You have the bandwidth to host them. You have the bandwidth to go there. I'm not saying you go there with everybody, or if you are playing one format, you have people who haven't played that format. Otherwise, you can send a squad there. They'll also get to learn. You'll get to know more about them, and Netherlands will also benefit from it. So I think that is something that should definitely be looked into.
100% there, and sort of got the order wrong there. We had a couple of segments in plan for all the teams. Let's just stick to that right now. I'll just go back to what we had in place. So we'll first, again, to be clear, we'll first begin with what we felt went wrong for each of these teams in the World Cup, and then we'll talk about what's next for them going forward. So yeah, with Netherlands, let's look at what went wrong for them in this World Cup. To put it succinctly, firstly, batting versus spin. Again, something we had spoken about during the World Cup preview, during the mega preview, that is, how Netherlands would struggle against spin given their lack of gameplay against spin. And again, you can't really blame them for that. Again, has to do with the fact that they haven't gotten enough game time in these conditions. So had to do with that. So they really couldn't get going against spin. Had one of the poorest numbers when it comes to playing spin.
Yeah.
I consider average, consider strike rate, consider even balls per wicket. On all these parameters, Netherlands ranked one of the lowest. But one more aspect when it comes to spin was the bowling as well. Although Aryan Dutt was good, they had Colin Ackerman chipping in, they had Fandamov taking a couple of wickets here and there. One more thing we have to note, even with their spinners, was the fact that they weren't, as penetrative as they would have liked them to be when it comes to wicket-taking ability. They were good defensive options. They really did well when it came to, controlling the run flow, ensuring the economy is being maintained. But they weren't, attacking enough. They didn't get as many wickets as they would have liked. In fact, Netherlands spinners averaged the third worst, only above Sri Lanka and Pakistan. Two other spin attacks that really struggled this time around, something Gurkirat and Nikhil Bhai will also allude to later. We've, of course, got Gurkirat joining us. Gurkirat looking excellent in that pink turban. really have to compliment you on that color. Really looks bright on you. How are you doing? And of course, we can straight away jump into Netherlands if you want to.
Yeah, I just want to say, and without really sounding arrogant or anything, but I think most turban colors look good on me. But ठीक है, thank you. And yeah, coming to Netherlands, you were alluding to their spin attack and everything. Uh, you I think this is probably the first time where the team that has finished at the bottom has been able to compete so well. They got 2 wins, but even if you look at other games, they were in the contest at certain points of time with quite a few opponents. They had Pakistan in trouble. Uh, if they had not committed some harakiri versus Afghanistan, they would have had been in that game for longer. Even if you look at New Zealand, right? They had them in some trouble, at some points of time. So this was a team that really did not tell you that they are coming to the World Cup after 12 years. And they did not really play like associates, which is a huge thing. So which is why you see that as they played a lot more and more, they started getting a lot more fans behind them, the neutrals behind them. So a lot to gain for Netherlands. And really, I really hope that when it comes to Netherlands, they get a few of their players get those IPL contracts, and they get to play a lot more versus top flight nations. So that is my sort of the entire sentiment about Netherlands and their performance. But yeah, they'd really expect their batters to do a lot more than what they did, because so many times they were just 3 down, 4 down in the power play, and when they weren't, like versus Afghanistan, they just found those ways to get out. And even versus India, you felt that they started. This is something we discussed day before. They scored. They had the fastest 50 versus India in the power play. I don't think anyone, even the wildest of predictions that people make out of just ठीक है कर देते हैं, मतलब ये जय माता दी प्रिडिक्शन से भी ऊपर था, just to
I
use
hope
that
that's not a
terminology.
taunt at me, Gurkirat. Just
नहीं
want
नहीं,
to put
this
it
is
out
not a
there.
taunt, and this is not a taunt, but in general, I meant to say.
Fair enough. So, Gurkirat, again, a question that I asked Nikhil Bhai as well earlier. Like this first review is this sort of sums up Netherlands' own performance, going in all different directions, but somehow finding its way eventually. But again, Nikhil Bhai spoke about how they can take a lot of positives from this tournament. And again, the context that I wanted to set was the fact that they hadn't played enough in these conditions. In fact, this was their first ODI in these conditions in over 10 years. They hadn't played here since in Asia, that is, since the 2016 T20 World Cup. If I'm not wrong, they played the qualifiers then, and the 2014 World Cup, of course. So, given that, were you happy with how they performed? Like, did they perform as per your expectations? Did they exceed them, or do you think you expected better from them? I'm Gurkirat bhai ho ki abhi bhi
I am there. I think Nikhil's. Ajay, you were asking me.
Yes,
I
yes.
thought you
Nikhil
were
bhai
asking
already.
Nikhil.
Nikhil bhai has already answered. I wanted your thoughts on how, as per your expectations, how did Netherlands fare this time around?
No, like I said, they did not look like a team who were coming to the World Cup after 12 years or are an associate. Uh, I think if we go back to our mega preview, we said that we'd really want them to win a couple of games. It was more out of hope rather than belief. And, all of us were frustrated after that Afghanistan game. You felt even versus Sri Lanka, maybe they could have done something better because they got to a decent score after being 91 for 6. So they showed a lot of fight. I mean, they were clearly better statistically than Afghanistan in the last World Cup. And if we go back to 2015, if we pick out the 3 or 4 bottom ranked teams, they were probably better than them too. And so it what I feel is that it also helped them that they played the Super League. They got to play versus South Africa, they got to play versus Pakistan, they got to play versus England. So experience always helps, and you really want them to get a lot more games, because after the qualifiers, the only ODIs that they had were in the World Cup straight away. And you again will have to give them the credit that they came a month before to play versus the teams in Karnataka, play in Hubli. So preparation wise, I think they did as much as they could have. But like it goes in any other job, you will have to learn a few harsh lessons on the job itself. and that has been their whole campaign this time around.
True, and given the kind of format that this World Cup had, the round robin format, it was going to be that much more difficult, to make it to the next round. Something we have spoken about before, so let's not sort of focus a bit too much on that. Just closing the bit on what went wrong for Netherlands. Further, struggle scoring in the power play, something Gurkit also spoke about. Like they lost a lot of wickets, but even in terms of scoring rate, they were in fact the slowest team in the power play this season, despite them doing really well in the end against India, barring that start they really struggled in general. Vikramjit Singh wasn't able to give the kind of starts I was expected off of him. He was way too inconsistent for the like Mr. came in and was a very handy replacement for them. But again, outside that, Max Stoddard also was a bit hot and cold in terms of his performances. So again, Nikhil, in terms of power play batting, Gurkira did mention how they lost a lot of wickets here and there, but even the scoring rate wasn't good enough. Do you think this had to do a lot with the conditions itself, or that's how the batters are, matlab, in terms of their abilities and how they bat?
See, if you look at it, most teams haven't had a great time opening any which ways. Even those who have a lot of experience haven't been able to quite get a hang of how to go about things at different venues, and that is the challenge. And that is the challenge gets even tougher when you have people who are out of touch. I think Max O'Dowd looked completely out of touch, and that can happen. That you get into wrong form at the wrong time. I think Vikramjit showed a lot of potential in some of the games. You go back to those punches of Stark where you felt that, "Arey, wow, this could be the day where he could get a good score going." But time and again they got in, and you felt that okay, now they'll go big, but then they got out. So I think, uh, and it's also the way that they're set up that they wanted people to bat deep. But if you're losing too many too early, the new guy is always going to come under a lot more pressure. So I think that is something that they'll hope next time they have at least one of the two batting deep, because when Max did that in the T20 World Cup, you saw how it helped the side just compete a lot more with the bat. So I think that is something that they'll have as a takeaway. That could they have gone to Wesley early? Who knows? It's a call maybe in hindsight, because nobody saw that working out as it did. So uh, that is definitely a concern, and it's also they came across tougher opponents, more experienced and more lethal. So जब आप out of form हो, touch में नहीं हो, तो everything is just going to compound in that sense.
True, and Baresi, meanwhile, just tweeted yesterday, if I'm not wrong, that he might be 38 and all of that, but don't count him out right now. He's still just as passionate about the game. Great to see. Let's hope we get to see him again in the next World Cup, because he was really in phenomenal form. Something I personally didn't really expected off of him, because he hadn't played much for them in the recent past, barring days when they didn't have their first 11 options, of course. Let's hope Vikramjit Singh, of course, he's got time on his hands. I really hope, what he did against Stark this time around, what he did to Rabada in the last T20 World Cup, if he's able to replicate that a lot more consistently, great signs for Netherlands, sorry, not New Zealand. But yeah, so to round off the points, of course, batting versus spinners weren't attacking enough, and of course, they also struggled scoring in the power play. These were the 3 points, where Netherlands can really improve on going forward. But talking about what next for them, we did, speak about the first point, where better injury management will, of course, definitely help them in terms of them being able to field the strongest 11. Better FTP planning. This was a point that we touched upon briefly when Nikhil Bhai and I were talking about how, Ryan Cook mentioned in one of those press conferences that, a couple of teams have approached them, asking them if they are free, which they clearly are. Gurkirat, are you hoping for more games? Do you think Netherlands will get more game time going forward now, thanks to their performance in this tournament?
You'd have to hope for that, but honestly, if you ask me, this is not something that Netherlands can do on their own. This is where the bigger boards and the ICC need to step in. uh, I think the only thing that can happen is you can expect some boards that if they are going for a tour to England, play some games in Netherlands, because that they do when India do it when they go to India do it when they play Ireland, when they go to England. So that is something you can expect. That is something I felt that teams can do when India are going to come and play a test match, or when teams are going to come to India to play a test match, that they could play versus Afghanistan, because Afghanistan played their home games in Greater Noida, Lucknow, and Dehradun so many times. So I think the push for that has to come from the ICC, because if that happens, one is the obviously the skill development that happens, but skill development doesn't happen in isolation. It can only happen when there is financial support. So when these teams will visit, these boards will also make money. they'll be able to invest something in the grassroots. Right now you see so many players that become player that become sort of representatives of the Irish team, Scotland, or Netherlands. Most of them have come through the county system. They've not really relied upon domestic cricket in in Ireland or in Scotland or Netherlands by themselves. If you look at countries like UAE, a lot of that population is expats, which have gone from the subcontinent. So that is where they cannot do much. They can always be open to any and every opportunity that comes to them, but the push for this has to come from the ICC, which is why I felt that scrapping the Super League was a poor idea. Because the Super League was there, Netherlands could get the games. Now there is no Super League. There is no incentive for the bigger teams to play, and it is not a lose-lose situation for bigger teams as well, because in these games what those teams can do is test their bench strength, which is something that Pakistan did not do, but India do it when they play versus Ireland. So it is not a lose-lose for big teams as well. There is something to gain for sure.
Well, let's hope better sense prevails in that sense, because we've spoken rather plenty of times before in terms of how a lot can be done to improve cricket, to expand cricket's horizon geographically and otherwise, but not really much has been done. We can only be hopeful that that does happen going forward. But yeah, going forward for Netherlands, another talking point and another thing I personally think they would want to focus on is definitely develop more anchor type batters. The reason I mentioned that is because one of their primary objectives this time around was to ensure they play the 50 overs. Even in the India game, we saw that they knew that this target seems a bit beyond their reach. So let's try and do the next thing possible, which is play the 50 overs out. Unfortunately, what I personally felt was they didn't have enough batters to be able to do that, to stick around long enough to just play themselves in. Like Engelbeck, this is where I felt Engelbeck was really good. Initially, I had my complaints, I had my reservations. Even during the India Netherlands game, I did bring it up about how he has a strike rate of 68 in ODIs, which basically means in this World Cup, because he made his debut in the opening game. But come to think of it, in hindsight, probably that was what was expected off of him, because they knew that they don't have enough batters who can sort of play themselves in. Max Odout was another player who knew how to consume balls, who knew how to stick in there, but that's what it felt like. He was just getting stuck. He wasn't, able to rotate strike enough. He wasn't able to do much about, getting those starts, playing those deliveries in. Usually you expect your set batters to go kick on and score something substantial. Wasn't to be the case with Max Odout. Sidewind, more often than not, he had a couple of 50s, he had a couple of 40s as well. So that was good to see from him. In fact, the couple of 70s that he did score also came at a strike rate in excess of 90, which show that he also has those gears. Once he's played himself in, he can, sort of get those boundaries more frequently if needed. Unfortunately, he got out at the wrong time against India. So wasn't to be the case. But Nikhil bhai, let's start with you in terms of their batting. Like, do you think this has a valid point for them to focus on in terms of them breeding more batters, grooming more batters to be able to play themselves and a lot more, play more deliveries firstly?
So I think it is something they'll eventually do anywhere, even if they just keep playing a lot more. I think what this World Cup has shown us, and we'll discuss this probably for all sizes, ODI cricket has a different tempo. It is not two T20s, and it is not a shorter version of Test cricket. So it has its own tests, it has its own challenges, which is why it is what it is, and it is why it tests you in different dimensions. First 10 overs has different challenge, 11 to 40 will have different challenge. So the more you play, the more you face, the more better you'll get at adapting to situations. You mentioned Cyberand. I think Scott played two very good knocks where he was batting so deep, and you felt comfortable watching him back. Okay, yes, he's sweeping his way in with a game with a lot of calmness, composure. That it is there. I know what to do. I'll get this through done, and that's what you want your big players to do. So I think Colin Ackerman looked great in a couple of knocks where you felt that yes, he could go and kick on and make a big score, but he did. So I think it will just happen. A lot of their stars not getting converted was also due to the kind of bowling that they don't quite enjoy facing, whether it is leg spin or I remember that Iftikhar Ahmed, Colin Ackerman sweep shot comes to my mind. Colin Ackerman got out to the sweep to Kuldeep as well very early. So these are some calls that some days will work for you, some days it will not. But all this will tell you, okay, going forward, what are your better options? What is the things that you might want to keep in mind to bat deep? So I think it'll be a byproduct of them playing a lot more and then playing in different conditions a lot more. So I think will invariably happen because you had Teja Nidamdaru who played so well in the last game combating Kuldeep and Jadeja. But maybe he batted too low. So I think that's where the challenge will come now. Okay. How is it that you're going to plan your batting order? Where do you want Cyberand? Where do you feel Scott should bat? Is Teja batting too low? So I think those entry points and all of that, the more they play, the more they'll have a very clear idea that this is where we want to float around.
True that. And speaking of starts as well, in fact, Netherlands had the third highest number of double-digit figures, double-digit scores when it comes to batter starts, which clearly show that they had a lot of their batters getting those starts, but unfortunately not being able to convert them. Let's hope, yeah, like Nikhil Bhai said, with more game time, they will be able to understand how to play ODI cricket as is and not treat it as a longer form of T20 cricket or a shorter form of Test cricket. Gurkira, in terms of talking about starts and talking about how they weren't able to get themselves in enough or as often as they would have liked. Do you have anything more to add to that?
No, I mean, Nikhil pretty much summed it up about, how a few dismissals happened. Another dismissal that came to my mind was Colin Ackerman's dismissal versus Bangladesh. Now, they still won that game, but it was still a soft dismissal. So, there have been quite a few like that. A lot of dismissals I felt in that Sri Lanka game to, I think it was Rajita in that game who took a 3 for. Yeah, I think it was Kasun Rajita who took a 3 for. Ackerman played a cut, and most days on that delivery, had the ball bounced a little more, it would have found the fence, but it did not bounce as much. Took the under edge, went to the keeper. Then there was another dismissal played on. So there were quite a few dismissals like that. So sometimes you felt that even if that hurt their tempo in the sense uh, partnership was building, a wicket fell, then they had to regroup or sort of start building again. So see, a lot of things, it will sound like a broken record, but a lot of things will only improve as they get more and more game time, because they've showed that they have the raw materials to do well, to be a good ODI side. They've planned well. That's one side. I think they probably bowled the most amount of spin in the first 10. That tells you that they were looking at, they were not stuck to a particular conventional idea. They had that paper in the hand to see which bowler to bowl when. So a lot of things they did right, and you can only hope that they get enough game time to improve, because uh, and it's good for cricket also, because uh, you know 2003 was Kenya's moment, but now they're nowhere. So you don't want to lose cricket teams who have shown some spark, and then go away. With Ireland, you felt that okay, they've been doing well. They defeated England in 2011, 2015. Also, they had 3 wins in the group stage, but then right, this qualifier they really struggled. I think they lost to UAE also. So you don't want to lose out on good cricket teams. You want that if there is one generation of cricketers who've taken the team to a decent level, then you have something to build on that. Now most of that generation of Irish players who made that team a force, or that was a team who you really couldn't take lightly, because they had chased 300 etc, into back-to-back World Cups. So you want teams like that to happen. And so the best thing that you can hope is that Netherlands now don't go the route of Ireland, or that Ireland way. So you can hope, but we all of us know that the priorities of the people who run the game lie elsewhere. So
Fair enough, yeah, and that's it from the review of Netherlands. Let's quickly now move on to, of course, the next team, which closer home is Sri Lanka, a team that's right now marred in a lot of off-field controversy as well, something that we won't talk about right now. And for those who are tuning in just now, do check out yesterday's Monday Night Live episode as well, where we did speak about Sri Lanka's off-field controversy and the ban and all of that. And also, please make sure you're hitting the like button. Also, do subscribe to us if you haven't already. Nikhil Bhai, Sri Lanka, let's start with you in terms of first thoughts. They came in ninth. Was that something you expected, going into the tournament?
No, definitely not. You felt that they'll be part of the middle points table model. Okay, bhai, you need to win this game, you need that game. There was hope in terms of you had a very good engine room in Asalanka, Kushal Mendes, and Sadira, who had shown promise in the Asia Cup, and you had a decent bowling attack to back. Despite the injury to 1 and 2, you still felt that, yeah, maybe Madhushanka a bit is something that caught a lot of people. off guard and you didn't see it coming so through. Highlighting, a lot of us did feel that he will come good, and which is good on that part. But you felt that they could make something out of this with Thikshina, with Patirana, but with Chanaka, with Velalage, with DDS, but it just did not work out. And the story is like, you can't put a finger to one thing and say that this is the one reason that they did not do well, because there are combination of so many things that we'll talk about in terms of their batting, the strength of the spin attack, the consistency of the pacers, and the support that Dilshan never had. And even he had two great games, but one was a very expensive fifer against India. So it is not going to be easy when you are competing with sides who seem better balanced. They always lacked that bite at 5-6, more so after Shanaka left. Matthews came in, filled in, got a great game against Bangladesh. Sorry, against
England.
England. But there is only so much that you can do in terms of trying to push people to do well. So I think overall it was the batting that caused them. But yeah, we'll discuss about that in detail also.
100%. And Gurkirat, in terms of your expectations going into the tournament, how has Sri Lanka fared? Like, achieved, I mean, sort of met your expectations, below par, or do you think they've achieved more than necessary?
You felt that they had in them to finish with 3 or 4 wins, or I mean 4 wins, if not five. 4 wins was something that they could have realistically done, because they had beaten Bangladesh and Pakistan in the Asia Cup, lost to both in the World Cup. So you felt four games that they could have managed even in the worst case scenario. But it's just that injuries, then you know losing the game like they did to Pakistan. What also did not help them is that when they started losing games, they also started to lose patience with a few players. I felt that they could have stuck to backing Velalage, which they didn't. It is understandable because he was dropped after 2 games. So I felt that that is something that they could have done. And then reliance on a few players and them not clicking also did not help. Like DDS really could not put up an impactful score. Maybe I think there was this one score of 30-40, but that was about it. And then a lot of middle order collapses from good platforms. That so you have to feel for them, because they also had a lot of injuries in the campaign. But still, they could have been better. They should have easily qualified for the Champions Trophy. They will look back at 2 games and feel like, we should have won that Pakistan game, and we should have really beaten Bangladesh.
Interesting, Nikhil bhai. Let's quickly talk about Sri Lanka's campaign and how they sort of went about their business this time around. You could see that like 2 wins. Nikhil bhai can just walk us through it.
Yeah, you see, they lost. They started with the worst possible manner. I mean, two of those crazy games. I mean, one game you end up getting a lot of runs scored off you, and in the next you also you score so much runs, but you end up conceding them as well. So I think those two never helped, and then that was followed by a rut that you felt that okay, Australia game was always going to be tricky, but they had two decent games, Netherlands game and the England game. I think was something that should have, you felt that okay, now this will start to turn them around. But uske baad bhi you kept seeing those same mistakes happening. I think Afghanistan game was the one game where you felt that what were they doing batting first, batting at that rate in Pune. Ke you had to get more, because the comfortable nature of which Afghanistan chased it down, you felt that wow, they left a lot of runs out there. But you also understand there were key players who started to taper off after that start against South Africa, Pakistan. That Kusal Mendes had a great start against South Africa, had a great knock against Pakistan, but then just continued to taper off, and that will never help if your form guys are not able to put up runs. And the end towards the later of it was just almost like the writing was there on the wall. The India game, forgettable one. I don't think they'll ever want to think that they played that game. The Bangladesh one had so much talking points, probably more talking points than positives from them in the World Cup. And the last game again, just blown away. And you were just waiting for that, that campaign to end. And just a day after the end, the board gets done in. So I think a very sorry figure in that sorts, because a lot of these guys are very young. but I think they were let down by a lot of experienced guys also not coming through. Uh, Most times we have Samara Vikrama. We discussed about him batting very well against Spain, but there are few games where we felt that him, Kusal Mendes getting out back to back did not help them. So all of these small things played a huge part in their campaign never quite taking off, because yes, they missed one in the Asaranga, but they did miss him in the Asia Cup as well. And they were able to make to the final on the basis of some really good collective performances. We spoke so many times about them finding new hero every game, and that is something that never really found out in the World Cup of uh, Pathirana going off, then Velalage not getting back, then you continue to rely on DDS, thinking now he'll come good. Then Chamika gets a couple of games, but you did not expect of him to come good. And injury to Kusal Paira, Dimut Karunaratne not taking off. So I think it was almost all of the things that you can't control. Everything went wrong with the bat, with the ball, with the pace, and with the spin department as well. So I think they'll want to really rethink a lot. And when we talk about what went wrong for them, I have a few quotes also from Mahela that will really tell us why all of those problems have come through for them.
100%. And Gurkirat, a couple of bright spots there in terms of their performances. That is individually, of course. Samara Vikrama with the bat, Dilshan Madhushanka with the ball. Who impressed you more between the two, though?
You'd have to say Madhushanka, because Sadira, you had still seen a bit of it in the Asia Cup, but Madhushanka, with the tally that he had, was very impressive. So yeah, has to be Madhushanka without a doubt, because this has been a World Cup where bowlers who rely on swing have struggled in the power play. Stark has struggled for wickets, Bolt has struggled for wickets, Shaheen has struggled for wickets, and uh, then there's this player from Sri Lanka who everyone thought will be just another one of the bowlers that they have, who probably play in this tournament and then not be seen again, because that has been a sort of feature with a lot of struggling teams. A player comes, gets to play some 7 8 games, and then is out in the wilderness once again. So has to be Madhushanka without a doubt.
मधुशंका को देखे मुझे बस वो धोनी वाला मीम आता है. आई नो पर्सनली आई हैव नथिंग टू गेन, बट ऐसा ऐसा बोलता है ना वो, मेरा मेरा लड़का, समथिंग ऑन दोस लाइंस. यस, that's what comes to my mind. Not that again I had nothing to do with his success, but it does feel personal, just like Umar Zai's success feels personal too. Nikhil bhai, of course Afghanistan is still a while away in terms of discussion today at least, but yeah, Nikhil bhai, Sri Lanka, what went wrong for them this time around? They just have the graphic on. There we go. Yep, you can take it through.
Yeah, so again, nothing that surprises you there. All 3 points, batting faltering as a unit, something that we discussed in the Asia Cup review as well. Form and usage of DDS and Tikshana, something Paji also talked about DDS not getting starts, and for Tikshana and injuries to bowlers regularly. Now again, we discussed all of this in bits about missing Samir at the start, missing Lahiru Kumar after a good game. This will not help you plan, but I think there are a couple of quotes that I'll share with what Mahela said after the tournament was done, and which will tell you why the first 2 points are somewhat interrelated in terms of why the domestic circuit is not able to get to a better unit of people who will come good. So Mahela went on to say that in domestic cricket we play on pretty slowish wickets, so the batters aren't going to trust their soft selection on their short selection on good wickets, because they've not gotten used to that at all. So against high quality bowling, it will get even more difficult. Now, this is as if we हमने पहले कहीं सुना हुआ है, where we've discussed these same points for a certain team that is going to play tomorrow, but it just tells you why every small thing that you do in your domestic circuit plays a role. So their batting faltering as a unit. You talk about Nisanka, he got a lot of starts. You talk about Kusal Mendes, he got great start, but then tapered off towards the end. Satira Vikrama also had a lot of, you felt start Mila got out. And then you saw with Asalanka as well that he got in, then tapered off, and then came back again. And DDS never arrived. So this, if you keep playing on decks where you don't need those big scores, it will not become a habit. And when you're playing on good batting decks, it is something that holds true for Sri Lanka, for Afghanistan, and for other sides as well, that you need those kind of surfaces so that you are into that rhythm of batting deep, batting big. Something Netherlands could also benefit in terms of, which is why playing a lot of cricket on good batting decks. And then to the second point about spin, he went on to add that we've run numbers in the high performance center back home in Sri Lanka, and at the moment, 66% of the deliveries in domestic cricket are bowled by spinners. We even saw a match last week where the whole innings only spinners bowled. So it again tells you that, see, again, it may sound cliche, but then you're not helping build your system in terms of getting pacers into the game. Okay, अगर spin को उतना मदद मिल रहा है pitch से, so the players are not going to be challenged. Okay, let's now look to vary the pace. Let's now look to have more evolutions on the ball so that they'll get better. Which is why the point about Thikshana not coming through, that he would have played a lot of cricket on these decks, and whenever there is help, he'll feel that yes, this is what is done. But if you don't get tested against stronger opponents or on better batting wickets, you will not develop those skills that are required to to be able to challenge, and which shows in his wickets tally as well. That, I mean, he and Angelo Mathis eventually have the same number of wickets. That doesn't make any sense. Because one guy was playing every game, but then I can still sympathize with him that he did not have support at the other end. That Pati talked about Velalage playing and then him not being part of the side means at no point of time do you have any control, because you have players getting injured every now and then you have to move your combination aside. So it will not help you build a bowling unit. Now you discuss New Zealand, you talk about South Africa. They're all hitting teams as a unit, and that's where Sri Lanka will feel let down by that. Thikshana का फॉर्म नहीं चला because he never got that support from the other end कि यहाँ से runs रोक रहे हैं, so यहाँ से wicket जाएंगे. So you saw that with Dilshan Madhushanka and Kasun Rajitha as well, that Sri Lanka builds some pressure on India, and then Kasun Rajitha comes in, he just doesn't have a great time, and then he's playing the ball here and there, and then suddenly the pressure is off. So I think, again, all of those were obvious points, but just to add those two quotes to just tell you that why it's the structure also that's very important to take care of so that you are able to produce better talents.
True, a couple of very interesting points there. And Gurkira, I would want you also to sort of join in there, like in terms of how the domestic system works and the conditions on offer in Sri Lanka. So how do you strengthen the domestic setup then? Of course, the international side can get more experience by, going outside, playing other teams and playing, in batter-friendly conditions and all of that. But what about the feeder system? Like, how do you ensure that your domestic circuit is also strengthening at the same time? Air tours could be, I mean, in Sri Lanka, air tours could be one sort of, route. How else do you think can this sort of pipeline be strengthened?
See, firstly, I'm not really sure that what are the power dynamics there also, because a lot eventually comes down to what are the power dynamics in the board, and it's something we've seen over the last, I mean, post the retirements of Jayawardene and Sangakkara, which you could say around 2015. You've seen uh, helter skelter in terms of administration. You really don't know who's calling the shots, who's taking charge, or who's not. So, when you have so much of confusion, it's very difficult to then plan long term. You've also had players breaking COVID norms. It happened in England. Then you've had players uh, having criminal charges put on them in a different country. So all of those things also doesn't help. I think in a nutshell, what Nikhil quoted with Jayawardene saying that they play on pitches where you really don't need big scores. I think it works the other way around as well. If you only play on flat wickets, then also you don't adjust, because we have seen that with another team which we'll come to. So I think firstly they have to decide, before they decide what kind of pitches and etc. that they have, that who is going to be running the game, and is there a captain's vision or a selector's vision involved in that? Because also many times you feel that maybe a captain is there because he's the one who's very receptive with whatever is coming from the top, and not really having his own ideas and own thoughts. So all those things go hand in hand. I mean, if you are really so muddled in terms of how your national team is going to function, you cannot really expect a lot of clarity in terms of how your domestic teams will play. uh, I'm not sure. I think Sri Lanka have what, 6 teams or 7 teams in their domestic structure, something around that. So you cannot really suggest okay that they should make that batch even smaller, have lesser teams, which is something that you often discuss when it comes to discussing the county system in England or the Ranji Trophy system in India. So I think the only way that they can do is probably, try and strengthen, try and play on different pitches, ensure that with the LPL they don't take a route which is similar to the league in Bangladesh, where you are not just playing on pitches which are conducive to spin bowling. Play on true tracks. That I think still should be easier to manage, and then maybe look at other formats. I do feel that when it comes to making a systematic change in how you want to play a certain format, then it is easier to start with the shortest format first and then move on to the longer format.
True, and Sri Lanka is unique in that they have a very strong university and school cricket setup, so that is different. So we can't directly take comparisons from other countries probably, but yeah, fingers crossed. They do get their next crop of legends. A couple of names that do keep popping up then and now. I mean now and again. So let's hope before the next World Cup they also sort of come into the national setup. That is Shivon Daniel, if I'm not wrong, he was a part
Yeah.
of the under-19 team last year. There's Vijay Kant, who Sangakkara personally rates very highly. So a couple of these names that you keep hearing now and then. Let's hope that they do sort of make the jump to top flight cricket soon. So quickly moving on to, of course, the next segment for Sri Lanka, which is what next. Nikhil bhai, again, the stage is yours.
Yeah, I think the first step is very, very obvious that you have to, uh, you know, ensure that the workload is managed. And again, it is something that I know it sounds very stupid or cliche, but you have to really take care of players. In terms of you have to manage format and pools for separate format so that lesser workload, better management of people, so that you are able to find the right roles for right people as well. So it will help in the second bit as well, where you are able to find a stable partner for Nissan Cup, because you've gone from playing Kusal for Dimut for a long time to then going back to Kusal, who didn't play a lot, and then you've switched between the two. So that isn't not going to help Nisanka as well, who's getting starts at his end, but not able to convert, because again, you're always going to take care. Okay, bhai, okay, if you're losing one wicket early every now and then, it will not be great for him also. So I think, uh, again, not going to get deeper into the domestic structure and all of that, but from Upar se, what I feel is they can have a better management of players. They can get a stable partner up top, and this is just for this format is what I'm speaking about. And find the right all rounder for conditions, because they've trusted a lot on DDS, on Shanaka and Velalage, but you'll really have to nail down on one spot and one or a couple of all rounders that okay, these are the guys that we will back, because like Shanaka hasn't come good in a while. So how long can you go on with a guy who you feel can do this, can do that, but you'll need consistent performances from him to stay there. And then you have Chamika Kautanathan, who's probably a backup, fair call. But then how do you go about Durian Velalage? Where do you go with Wanindu Hasaranga? Do you want him to play both the formats or not? So I think if you take all of these calls, it'll get easier. You were able to call back on Matthews because he's that class, he's that good. But how to get to the next Angela Matthews? So again, it may sound like how do you get to the now, how do you get to the next Mahila Sangakara? But that is where you'll have to make separate pools, get to those right kind of people. Back then, they will fail, but at least you'll get to know more options, and maybe that's where they'll be able to segregate format issues as well.
True that. That's as comprehensive as it can get when it comes to talking about Sri Lanka's performance in this World Cup. Time to move on now, of course, to the next scene. But before that, let's just take a few comments. Don't worry, guys. Sanjay, sports fan, Mayur, Neelakandan, Vasant, of course, Naniko, our regulars here. Good to see you guys. And please keep your comments coming in. I know we haven't taken enough so far. We will be taking them as and when possible. Just that there's so many talking points that we would also love to cover so that we guys can also talk about what we want to before we forget. But yeah, please do keep them coming in. Vasant, of course, the age-old argument about having those tours and ensuring associate nations get more cricket with top tier nations. Again, like I've mentioned before, no, there's literally nothing that Nikhil Bhai, Gurkirat and I would be more happy to see than seeing an India A, India B, India C. India se kisi India under 19 bhi chalega right now at this point. Just like you've mentioned, India emerging squad ko bhi hit sakte ho 100%. Anything that will help cricket, expand geographically, we're there. we're 100% there. We're on board, and we don't mind the whatever cost, it that comes with it. I don't mind sort of it coming at the cost of an India England or an India Australia series. We're tired of that. Please play them so that they also get more eyeballs, so that they also get to play better cricket. They also improve their skills, so that we can get more close encounters. I mean, how many of you wouldn't agree to the fact that Netherlands South Africa wasn't probably the game of the tournament? So that's all we're all looking forward to. So 100% Vasant there. No two questions about it. Let's really hope that we get to see a lot more of that. Ryan Cook did give us, some confidence there. Let's hope that actually turns out to be the case. Sanjay, meanwhile, says players like Bastilleida, Nostus Kenjige, interesting shout. Coming into leagues like the ILT20, which are kind of feeder leagues to IPL, also help these countries. 100%, definitely. Like I really liked Nostos Kenjige's those, accurate slow left arm. If I'm not wrong, was very good with it. And funnily enough, he is from Chikmagalur. Something I was just blown apart by. Like, how is a guy from Chikmagalur in America playing league cricket there? But yeah, definitely 100% agree with you there. Even someone like a Mohammad Moeen loved what I saw from him. He's also with the Super Kings franchise. He was with the Super Kings franchise in the MLC, and now he's with Sharjah Warriors, if I'm not wrong here. So good to see 100%. Mayur, of course, excited for the New Zealand South Africa final. No comments. I'll just leave it at that. But 100%, time to move on, of course, to the next team, to the last team in terms of who's getting to play in the Champions Trophy, and the team that somehow managed to scrape themselves into Champions Trophy qualification. Gurkirat Paji's favorite team, of course, it is Bangladesh. How else can we not introduce the team? Gurkirat Paji, again, like first thoughts in terms of how Bangladesh were in this tournament. Why were they so woeful?
Why were I mean, how you can answer why? I don't know how you can answer, because yeah, it just looked right throughout the tournament. It just looked like a team which was just clueless in what they wanted to do. Uh, they might have finished above Sri Lanka and Netherlands, but make no mistake, they were far more clueless in what they wanted to do. Maybe if Sri Lanka and Netherlands had not had those losses versus uh, India and Australia, Bangladesh could have easily finished below them. Those 300 losses did not help both the teams. But yeah, firstly, they did not have a clue on what is their right 11. Forget the right batting order, which everyone could see. I don't think they could even figure out till the last game that what is their right 11. Injuries to Shakib and Tuskin in between did not help, and you cannot really expect a team to do well in the World Cup when there has been so much drama just ahead of the World Cup in terms of who will play, who will not play, who will captain. Because Shakib was not going to be the captain coming into the World Cup; he was still a makeshift captain because it was Tamim, and then everything that happened in the lead up to the World Cup. So it's again a team that has so many off-field issues from the administration that it's difficult to straight away expect that these players will have complete freedom to do what they feel might be tactically good, or even to try out something. So there were a lot of basic errors. You felt Shariful not taking the new ball straight away, Mustafizu taking it, uh, Tohid's batting position, you never knew where he's going to bat. Similarly for Mehdi Hassan Miraz. And barring that one game versus Sri Lanka, you felt that even Shakib was just not Shakib, because he was not even trying to apply himself so many times. So uh, I don't know. They should see this qualification to the Champions Trophy 2025 as some kind of a blessing from cricketing gods, and take it as the last opportunity to improve, because they were given the test status 23 years ago. I think it happened in 2001. So it's been more than 2 decades since they have the test status. They've become a force to reckon with while playing at home, but that's about it. That's the only thing that you can talk about Bangladesh. They still not, they still not become a side that can compete in all conditions. Forget talking, winning in all conditions. And by this time they should have been able to compete better, and they just didn't turn up. So they'll have to decide again, like we were talking about, like I think we are going to speak about that for a few other teams. They will really have to decide that what is the brand of cricket that they want to play, how do they want to be recognized, and who's going to run that team. The board president running the team cannot work.
Interesting there, Nikhil bhai. And what are your thoughts? Again, I'm pretty sure Gurkirat has already spoken about whatever you wanted to, but anything you want to add to that?
And I think not much left in terms of not spoken, because all of this you've discussed in all of their games about their batting order, their bowling plans, and their emphasis on relying on certain individuals only. So all you hope is that the next batch has to come sooner. You can't always just rely on that one batch to really pull you through, whether it is Shakib, Tamim, or Mehmudullah. You need the Das, the Shantos, the Mehdi Hassans to start getting into that phase of now we'll take the team forward. And Mehdi Hassan is starting to do that, but you'll need more of that coming through from that second batch of people, because these they will start to go now. They are in that phase where they might look to give up a few formats. So I think it's that time of in their cricket also, that they'll have to really get serious about the next batch, because if that doesn't happen, as Paji said, competing and all of that will get really tricky.
All right, there. And Gurkirat, in terms of what went wrong for Bangladesh, let's start with that right now because a lot of things went wrong. I'm just surprised you were able to sum it up in 3 points because मेरे लिए तो like बस वो shopping list ऐसा बस बढ़ ही जा रहा है बढ़ ही जा
Wait,
रहा है.
you were surprised that I summed it up in 3 points? Or were you
Three. Let's not go down that road right now. But I'm talking about what went wrong for Bangladesh. Gurkirat, yeah, you can take it over here.
Yeah, so like I said, no idea about the best playing 11, no clue about the batting order, and the batting being stuck. And their numbers are only better than Netherlands, and Netherlands had their problems in terms of lack of experience, but Bangladesh cannot, say that. With the kind of pitches that Bangladesh play at home, you expected them to do better versus Spain. And we had Somesh write one article where their non-boundary strike rate also was poor versus Spain. Now that is the least you expect from Bangladesh batters, that they should be able to do this better. And you felt before the Asia Cup and going into the World Cup that their pacers could do something better, but their pacers also did not really turn up on the occasion. And I feel again a lot of it had to do with the usage, with using Mustafizur up front and Shoriful later on. And then Taskin's injury did not help. Hassan Mahmood, I think, played one game, and then I think for the last game they got in Tanzim, the Tanzim Shakib, the pacer who played 2 games, who played that game versus India in the Asia Cup. So there is that. And then the thing that they really need to look forward now is, again, which Nikhil was saying, they need to find out who is their next batch of middle order batters. Simple as that. Because Shakib's 36, Raheem's 36, I think Mohammadullah is also 37, 38, or maybe 36. This batch cannot play any longer. Shakib's been struggling with his batting. Mushfiqur did not really have a good World Cup, despite being one of their crisis men over the last few years. And Mohammadullah, I think, had a good World Cup because he had a lot to prove, because he was not there as a part of the team initially. So they really need to find out and stick with those players, back them. It's something again which we spoke for Sri Lanka. They really need to back them. They need to back those players and see where can they go from here. And one other thing, same for Sri Lanka as for Bangladesh, play on better pitches at home. Because it's not something that I am saying right now. It's something which Mohammadullah said 2 years ago, in the World T20 2021. He said that our batters cannot really, they don't know how to set up for a target of 140, 150 plus, because the pitches that they were playing at home, you score 120, you win, because then Shakib will bowl, both the Mehdis will come in, someone else will bowl their arm, and that's about it. And that is what happened. They smashed both New Zealand and Australia, at home before that World T20. But they could barely, they lost to Scotland in the qualifier stage, and then did not really have a good performance in the Super 12s. But Australia went on to win the World Cup, while New Zealand was the finalist. So that just tells you how much they are reliant on pitches for results. You cannot be so reliant. Although it's a different format, but you could say the pretty much the same thing for ODIs as well.
Interesting. Pratik meanwhile says instead of Bangladesh, ICC should invite West Indies for Champions Trophy 2025.
No,
भाई
I,
नेदरलैंड्स ने क्या खराबी किया मतलब आपका कुछ बिगाड़ा है क्या पर्सनली कुछ किया है क्या नेदरलैंड्स
I don't agree with that, because
yeah
West Indies have also been on a downward spiral curve. They did not qualify for the 2017 Champions Trophy. Uh, Played the qualifiers, and they were not great last time around in the World Cup. So if West Indies have missed out, it's fair. Zimbabwe would have been a better shout, if anything, than West Indies.
100%. I was going to say I'm not going to dignify that argument with the comment, but Gurkirat has. So, just one question for Nikhil Bhai before we speak about what next for Bangladesh. Gurkirat spoke about how Bangladesh, given the kind of surfaces that Bangladesh players play on regularly, it does become difficult. Sort of similar to what we also spoke about Sri Lanka. But why are Bangladesh batters struggling to even play spin when their own surfaces are so spin friendly? When they play so much spin, when they face so much spin, in their domestic circuit, in their domestic tournaments, despite that, them not being able to rotate strike, not being able to be aggressive against spin, not being able to even handle spin as competently as expected, as they are expected to. What do you think is the reason there? Is there a lack of skill?
No, I wouldn't say that it's a lack of skill, but you have to take into consideration that when you're playing domestic cricket and you see the past scores being where they are, you don't, as Paji said, you don't have to upskill yourself so much that you have to outbat the opposition, because you know कि अगर 120 ही chase कर रहे हैं तो you don't have to go that hard. And some of the time it also depends on where they bat. And if you look at some of the BPL batting orders, you'll be shocked. Okay, people bat anywhere and everywhere. So that is also something that doesn't help people. Okay, what is my role? Where am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then at what pace? And once you are able to do it in a domestic circuit, it still doesn't guarantee you that you'll do well. You take Afghanistan's example. By playing Mujib, Rashid, and all of them, Noor, you play them in the nets, you expect them to do well against spin overall. But that doesn't come through, because what you have to realize is when you're playing them in the nets and when you're playing people like a Zampa or a Kuldeep Yadav, they are building on a different, pressure game. That Jadeja is not leaving your stumps. He's bowling at 95, 98. Now, you are not used to that. You are used to a guy bowling at that speed, at that line, but you get that one odd ball here and there. And you feel, okay, chalo, this is where the bad ball come, I'll put it away. Or if you don't get the ball, you get a gap or you see something that works for you. But then the higher you get in terms of playing competition, you will see that those options that they were there for you in the domestic circuit, they may not be there in the international circuit. So there was a time, I can't remember which game, they had 6 fielders inside the ring. Netherlands Bangladesh game, a great example. Mehmudullah and Mehdi Hassan are playing. It seems all hunky dory, no pressure as such, but yeah, ठीक है, overall pressure, but the rate is in check. But Scott got 6 players inside the ring. They are building dots. They are hitting to the fielders, unable to run. Eventually, they get a run out. So you can play spin, but the pressure that is there in international cricket, and then people are again operating at a different level. So for you to get to that level, you need to play that a lot more and tour a lot more, so that you are getting more in terms of what is my release shot. कि अगर ये मेरे से नहीं हो रहा है, this is my option. Let me get the field change somehow, or can I go down, or can I play switch, all of that. So the more you play, the better you get in terms of exploring those options also.
Yeah, it's, just to sum it up, it's one thing to be able to defend spin, or not lose your wicket to spin, but completely another to find that boundary option. So those are two different things. If you are playing someone in the nets, you might develop a better defensive game, but you still need to find those gaps or that boundary option somewhere. So slight difference in both the things. It's something that we have seen with Virat a lot.
Good point that, in fact, even numbers back, these points are because Bangladesh had the lowest run rate versus spin in this World Cup, 72.7, even lower than Netherlands. But they had the second highest balls per wicket, which means the batters faced the second highest number of balls per wicket against spin, which means that they clearly weren't getting out to spin, but at the same time weren't able to get those boundaries that both Gurkirat and Nikhil have been alluding to. Time to, of course, move on to what next for Bangladesh. Gurkirat, yeah, once again, you can take it away here.
Yeah, so like I was saying that it's something that I've already said. Need to really identify what brand of cricket, need to identify next set of middle order batters, and really need to find a long term captain. At this point of time, you feel in terms of seniority, Liton Das or Miraz could be those people. But then Litton, despite so much experience, really doesn't offer you any reliability in terms of performance. So, do you want to go that route and pick that captain, or do you want to, go with Miraz? But the problem with players like Mehdias and Miraz, if you make them the captain, is that there could be an over reliance on from the captain himself on his own skill, because we have seen that with bowling captains sometimes, that either they are over reliant on their own skill or they don't rely on it enough. And if it is someone like Miraz, who's now doing who's also been a decent batter and is sort of an all-rounder, you just fear that if he becomes the captain, he starts over relying on his own performances a lot, and then might just struggle to get the best out of other players. Because it's something we've discussed when we were discussing about Pat Cummings, that maybe when you are a bowling captain and a lot of things are going in your head, you may miss out on a few things. Now here, he's both, he bowls, he as well as he also bats, so may not be able to find that balance, which is why traditionally we have seen batting captains have tended to do better. So Bangladesh really need to find out that whether Litton's going to be that guy, and if it is Litton, then they really need some consistency from Litton. These 20 30s and then finding a way to get out doesn't really work from a senior batter like that, especially when he will have youngsters around him. Because what will happen is that if you when you are going to bring in a few youngsters in the team and you want them to settle in, at that point of time you really need your experienced pros to step up. Now if they don't step up, it you it really becomes then to really to take a call on anyone, because you don't want to drop the youngsters, and it would be unfair to drop them if you don't drop the senior pro. And this dropping the senior pro is also not easy, especially one of them is the captain. So a lot of things that they have to decide upon right now.
All right, just one last question before we wrap this up. What about, Nikhil Bhai and my favorite player, Tawhid Hridoy? Unfortunately, didn't have as good a tournament as we hoped for. Nazmul Hussain Shanto, again, another player that we were looking forward to given the kind of form he was coming into the tournament. Both of them, again, like, do you see them being given a long enough rope? Because they seem to be the answer to Bangladesh's problems of, not being able to score quickly enough.
As players, definitely they should get those ropes. You'd feel that even though Tanzid Hassan, the other opener, did not really have a great record domestically coming into the team, he got two decent scores. So maybe you want to back him or not, that is also another thing that to look at. uh, Whether they'll go and make a youngster the captain, I'm not sure, because right now I don't think uh, even Shanto knows what position is the team looking at him for him to bat. I think he should open, but they have stuck with him as a number three. For Tawhid, again, I feel he should be top four. I felt that the Asia Cup could have been a good trial in that regard, that he could bat at four, sandwich between Shakib and Rahim, but that did not happen. He was batting 6 7. You're not going to develop players like that by batting them at 6 7. So firstly, I don't know, if you have not really decided where a player is going to bat or what is his role, then to make that player the captain would be even confusing a lot more.
Fair enough. Meanwhile, Sanjay just says one thing I feel is when you're playing in nets, you don't get to experience the tactical side of captaincy, where the teams pick up weaknesses and try to target the players there. 100%, of course, it's not as simple as just facing spin in the net, so you do get acclimatized to it. It's not as simple as an argument as as it sounds. 100% agree with you there, Sanjay. But yeah, right now it is of course time to wrap this review up. I mean, the review of Bangladesh up, and time to move on to, of course, the defending champions, or just a side that was entering the World Cup, because yeah, Butler साहब ने कहा था कि नहीं भाई, they're not defending anything. Something they also went on to prove with their performances on the field in the World Cup as well. Nikhil bhai will be more than happy to talk about it and much more. Nikhil bhai, in terms of again England's campaign, let's just sort of cut to the chase. Just atrocious, right?
Yeah, a very, very sorry state of affairs. And there's a lot that has gone wrong for them. And you'd expect that as well for a side that is brimmed with so many people, so much skill. And again, we all take the mickey out of them in terms of how the narrative is built around teaching cricket and how to play and all of that, but haven't had a tournament to remember. And actually, if you look at this in itself will tell you a lot of things, that they bat first in that first game, and they see, okay, the dew is coming, so the next time they play a tough side, they feel, okay, let's do one thing, let's chase. But then South Africa end up scoring a mammoth amount of runs, and in between that, they feel that Kotla will go the way it was in the first game, so they think that, okay, let's look to chase, but eventually Afghanistan get a good score and they are not able to chase because the dew never comes for them. So that's getting robbed or wrong done by their own reading of the conditions. And then you go expect catcher Sri Lanka go Bangalore mein, so they should be able to play well. Turns out Anthony Matthews just has to roll his arm over to take first wicket in 3.5 years, and they are skittled for 150 odd. India game is the first time they looked a part of it with the ball, kept India to a score, but then in the chase, mm, uh, blown away, whichever way you want to call that. That spell that Shami bowls to Stokes is probably a summary of how everything has just fallen apart from them in terms of their planning, preparation, and people. You get to the Australia game, everything seems lost. They somehow stay in the game, but again, Adam Zampa ends up with a differential score with the bat, and then with the ball, they find a way to keep chipping away at wickets with nobody scoring apart from just David Malan and Ben Stokes suddenly starting to get his rhythm going. Netherlands game he scores, Pakistan game he scores, and everything seems fine, but it's all too late. So uh, I think England's this campaign is a proper case study in terms of how to not prepare, how to not muddle with your rich rain of resources in terms of how you want to manage people, and a, a prime case of knowing what you want to do. It sounds very silly that England may not know, but if you think of it, they had two T20 World Cups to plan. They won one, and they felt that, okay, this is something that's worked for us. But in that process, you always were going to not prioritize ODI cricket because टेस्ट क्रिकेट को तुमने अभी इंजेक्शन दिया था बेसबॉल का, तो you had to protect that image, and that combined with the success in T20 means that you can't give the ODI side enough games. You look at the data that they played 88 games in the previous fixture, and almost 12 of them played at least half of those fixtures, and 34 players were used then. In the next set, they end up with half. They are not even playing enough games in that regard, so that is not going to help. They ended up using more players क्योंकि distribution of players, and जहाँ पे पहले 12 लोग खेलते थे एटलीस्ट हाफ, अभी खाली 8 खेले. Eventually the side that played the first game, they rarely played together. If you think that you can come up into a 50 over World Cup thinking ke, it will just work out, it will not happen. And it starts right from top in terms of looking to get Ben Stokes into the side. And again, this is not a blame at Ben Stokes the player, this is at the process that you followed to get to him. And then when you get to him, the people that you played in South Africa, in Bangladesh, where is the consistency then in terms of people knowing their roles? Malan, you scoring, then you drop Roy. TK out of form. Root doesn't score. So much to say there, but yeah, hopefully they'll come back better because you feel kind of sad for Butler. But yeah, so this is probably the as empathizing as I have been for England in a while.
True that, but again, very interesting conversation that I sort of happened to hear was that of Rob
Yeah,
Keys, where he did speak about yeah, maybe he might have
I'll take the blame.
sort of prioritized Test cricket over it, and all of that. Just goes on to show that such sort of systemic errors just pop up during the tournament because if you don't play enough, you just don't know what's working, what isn't. But Gurkirat, first thoughts, because this is definitely not something any of us expected from England. The least all of us thought were कि हाँ भाई कम से कम semis तो पहुंच ही जाएंगे. What do you make of this performance? Oh, almost.
Mm, No, I mean just trying to find words to sum it up because Nikhil said a lot of things that I agree with. So I'm trying to find a different angle in which I can sum up. But uh, yeah, despite everything that happened, the the lack of preparation or the lack of consistency in the process, etc., etc., everything would have still looked hunky dory if Bairstow, Butler, and Root had scored runs. Both, all three of them. See,
But then that is the point, right? You
yeah,
never really set them up to score runs. So
yeah.
I think that is how England also went. Okay, they'll just score. मतलब they just assumed कि भाई ये हो जाएगा.
Hmm. So that's what I'm saying. That despite them not doing a lot of things correct, you still felt, because both Nikhil and I had them as our one of our
Yeah,
semi-finalists instead of New Zealand, because you felt that there was still enough quality to just pull them
yeah,
through. Like how individuals pulled through Australia to the semis.
yeah,
The Australia have not clicked as a unit, but they
yeah,
still went to the semis sheerly on the basis of individual performances. You felt Bairstow has played enough cricket in India to know how the pitches would be. Same for Butler. And you felt like, okay, Malan has not played a lot of IPL, but he's coming in with good form and eventually still managed to score runs. You felt कि ठीक है, something will come from Sam Curran, something will come from Moeen, something will come from Livingston. So maybe the sum of it, some maybe the sum will become greater than the parts. Vokes not taking wickets in the power play in the first 5-6 games did not help. Then Topley got injured, who was the only bright spot in the first 3-4 games. So see, they were not prepared well. Then they were hampered by injuries. Then they were hampered by bad form, and then they were just a little more hampered with everything else that happened around them. Them dropping Brook after that game versus South Africa, again I felt did not help them. They just wanted to back those all rounders, but not realizing that Livingston and Ali were together not one full batter and were together not one full bowler. So maybe could have played one of them and played Brook instead. So learnings from them, but these learnings will materialize into something if they first agree that yes, they messed up in a few things, and again they also have to look forward, uh, from a few players. They have to look forward from Ben Stokes. They have to move on from Moeen Ali. They got Moeen back even in test matches, so they have to move on from those players. And I don't know. For me, the biggest disappointment in terms of individual performances has to be Root. I had Root as my MVP, and yeah, he was so bad. Like I really don't know how to sum it up. So yeah, and there's not a lot that Butler could have done. Maybe apart from getting the 11 right and probably not not agreeing to bring back Stokes. I don't know how much of it was his own call or how much of it was the call of selectors, but yeah.
Fair enough. But yeah, we've already spoken about, quite a bit of what went wrong for England. Let's just have the graphic on as well so that we'll get those points up. Nikhil bhai, there you go.
yeah. I think was the first two things are already discussed in detail. Actually, all three of them, in terms of lack of clarity or conviction in plans, which we saw being discussed in terms of playing the all rounders and then going for a very bowling heavy attack at a venue that doesn't want that. Uh, you know, they are in that preview as well, Rob Key about mentioned about not having the local intel, but you don't need local intel to tell you that you don't want to field first in that hit in Bombay. I mean, it's just basing decisions based on data, but that data wasn't looked through deep enough to back that plan. So I think that is something that always seemed confusing. They got Jofra Archer also just as a reserve player. I mean, already, we discussed this in the previous well, okay, this side hasn't played together. There are too many players who love to bowl in one phase. You have Chris Vokes, you have Reece Topley, you have Sam Curran. They all love the first 10 overs. So then who will bowl at the end? You can't always rely on Marco, who's also injury prone. Okay, he'll just somehow step up. It will not happen. And then who will take wickets for you in the middle overs? It was just Adil Rashid. So I think the NHS embarked on this basis some very bold calls, and when those bold calls don't fire, it will look and go very pear-shaped. So I think all of those points in terms of lack of clarity, conviction in plans, usage of all-rounders and bowlers, something that we also touched upon in terms of how uh, there was this game against Australia where Smith is batting with Manas, and you feel that this is the best time to get Rashid, but because of the situation and how the game is set up, Josh goes to Livingston first because he's worried about कि भाई पहले उसका bowling का over खत्म कर लेते हैं, राशिद आएगा विकेट लेगा, but you are allowing the game to drift. I think this is also one of those very harsh lessons that Josh would have learned about this format, that you really can't wait, or you really can't be thinking कि it'll just happen. It is a very rude way to get those lessons in, because you feel कि यार, again, all of these are big names. Livingston, Moeen Ali, Sam Curran. You throw the ball to them in T20 cricket, it happens. And I think that's what they will really feel bad about, that, we felt it will happen and this it did not come out. So uh, a lot of it went wrong in terms of, again, bowling, batting. We discussed spin. They probably lost. They had the worst average against Spain barring Netherlands. And that is something that you don't quite feel it is the case with them. We also had a data point which said they got a lot of starts but never really kicked on. But then, because they never played this format enough in terms of understanding that they have to bat deep, it is not just an extended version of T20 cricket. So in terms of average, they have average of 25.3 against Spain. Second worst, only Netherlands are poor in terms of them now. And again, ऐसा नहीं है कि the ball has turned a lot and it has done a lot for them to struggle against Spain. So lots and lots to think about in terms of how can they arrest this rut and how they build from here.
True. I mean, yeah, like even in terms of balls per wicket, they again ranked second in terms of poorest balls per wicket. Once again, only Netherlands being above them or below them, however you want to look at it. Stats also, like Nikhil Bhai mentioned, they had 61 instances of a batter getting a double-digit score and not kicking on. 61. That's well above the second place Bangladesh, who had 48 such instances. But again, like moving on to what next for England. Again, we've already spoken about these points in different shapes and forms, but it is time to sort of collate and sort of put them clearly in one area so that you guys can also come and check it out. So in terms of what next for Nikhil Bhai, England. I know
नहीं,
it is
hopefully
Nikhil
me
Bhai.
also.
इतना भी इतना भी शायद नहीं बोलना चाहिए. But in terms of what
नहीं,
next
नहीं,
for
I
England,
think yeah, see, it's something that's there for every team, and again, it may not look wow, but actually it is what it is, right? You have to take a call on Livingston, you have to take a call on Moeen Ali, that yes, they'll be part of my T20 setups. So because see why this is important is, I'll take this all three first. Okay, help Butler identify and nail how they want to play. Now, they tried to do what Morgan did, but they lost a lot of these players playing Test cricket in a style that they wanted to, which meant he didn't have the right players and they were not able to identify the right roles for those players. कि अगर Phil Salt खेल रहा है, Harry Brook खेल रहा है, तो what is the, if Ben Duckett is playing, then what is the right role? Where am I looking for Ben Duckett to play? What is the role? Where do I want Zach Crawley to play if he's part of my backup plans in ODI? So which is why all three are straight away interrelated, because if you look at the test format now, Broad is retired there. You don't know where James Anderson will take a call on that. So how does it matter? Because if that is the case, Chris Wokes goes there in terms of Test cricket. So who is then your backup plan for Chris Wokes in ODI cricket? So all of these small things will matter, because agar kal James Anderson retires, okay, is Josh Tongue the answer there, or is Ollie Robinson the answer there? Is Turner your answer there? So all of this has to be taken into consideration, because जब हम बोल रहे हैं कि you did not prioritize ODI cricket, so if you are able to build separate pools, you will be able to find a very good player of people. Okay, this is my squad for ODI cricket. So you can prioritize whichever format of the game you want to. You will be able to get to the second stage of identifying these are the roles, these are the players for my format, this is how I'll play. And when you get to that, you'll eventually find the backups also for them. So you see, it's like a very straightforward way by separate format, separate pools, so that you can get to players better. You'll be able to identify kaise khel. And there is still Champions Trophy to come. So you have enough targets also, mini targets to place. Okay, there is a 24 ka T20 World Cup, target it accordingly. There is a 25 ka Champions Trophy, target that accordingly. And at the same time, तुम्हारा baseball का तो चल ही रहा है. So I think it feels it's more doable for England because they have the resources. But now all they have to do is sit together, get Butler, Matt Moss, Ben Stokes, Rob Key, everybody involved. Ke bhai, what is the priority order? And I don't think there should be priority order. It should just be you take these guys, you take these guys, you take these guys. Let's build from here. I mean that is the as इतना पॉजिटिव मैं इंग्लैंड के लिए कभी नहीं रहा हूँ पिछले 2-3 साल में, but yeah, it is
Yeah.
what it is.
I'll just say one last thing on that. maybe they cannot make pitches domestically that can offer grip. So try and try and tour those places where batting will not just be about clearing your front leg and hitting it as far as possible, because ODI cricket is not about that. T20 still majorly is about that, but ODI cricket is not about that. ODI cricket requires you to graft.
But even T20 cricket, they'll get a shock if they don't prepare for West Indies accordingly.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
CPL के scores देखे सबने, so it is not
हाँ,
going to be.
थोड़ा बहुत मैं बात के लिए छोड़ डाला बट
True. Let's just take a few comments before we wrap this review up. Sportsfan says, would be funny if England lose to India in India and don't even make it to the next WTC finals after prioritizing tests. That's very much a possibility, to be honest, them not winning in India. I'm just curious to see how baseball works, especially.
But then they will. Now I'll get back to my usual self. Then they will void it. They'll say, कि, "Oh, we didn't have this guy. We didn't have this guy." So void.
I'm
we don't
I'm
consider it to be a
I'm
test series. ऐसा कुछ बोल देंगे
Yeah.
बस.
I'm worried. I'm worried that you don't want them to lose a lot more points in the over rates, because they lost so many in the Ashes that was drawn.
True.
So yeah,
It'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting, to be
because
honest.
I without sounding arrogant or anything, I don't see how they'll beat India in India. It's one of the toughest challenges that have been there in the history of the game, beating India in tests at home, especially this current generation.
I would probably go one step further and say it is the toughest challenge out there, not one of. It is the period,
No, I was
especially for
talking in
India.
terms of history. Like there have been
Oh,
teams in
okay.
West Indies that you've toured. There's
True,
been,
true,
so
true.
I'm
I
talking
was
in
just
terms
talking
of
about the current, yeah, in
currents.
terms of
So no
yeah,
doubt, currents. So no doubt. It is
exactly.
like सर पे कफन बांध के आओ.
अरे भाई साहब आपने सर पे ऐसे गुलाबी रंग की पगड़ी क्या पहनी है, ऐसे सर पे कफन ये सब बनवा रहे हो इंग्लैंड टीम से. सही है भाई. Let's just take a couple more comments. Paris Arora asks us, or before Paris, let's just take Sanjay's comment as well. He asks us our thoughts on Ben Stokes' comments on workloads. Nikhil bhai, any idea? I'm not sure what the comment itself was.
I don't think it was Ben Stokes. I think it was Nasser Hussain who said that, about the timing of the World Cup and where it has come after an Ashes series. But then you always knew this. And when that is said for an India tour to England after an IPL, nobody buys it. Everybody wants to comment on Ranji Trophy and pitches and scales and all rounders. So you get what you give, as my daughter also tells me. So you've just gotten what you gave to a lot of people. See, it's not something that's new to you. You knew the World Cup will be in this kind at this point of year. That's the problem with WTC as well. We know when it happens after an IPL. So I mean, if India tells anything, you will say, "Oh, don't cry and do this and do that." It is what it is. You have, which is why go back to that point. Build separate pools. Don't have the same guys playing. क्योंकि देखो ऐसे ऑस्ट्रेलिया भी खेली तो और ऑस्ट्रेलिया तो जीत अच्छा सॉरी बट इंग्लैंड वन मॉरली सॉरी माय बैड
क्या moral victory सब भूल मत जाओ भाई. That is more important of anything, especially since they are the guardians of the spirit of cricket. Of course, all they're looking for is moral victories. Yeah, just one last comment before we move on. Paras asks us, who is the greatest white ball Indian bowler? Even he would be far away from the best in the world. I'm guessing he's talking from the current lot. Gurkirat, if you had to take a name or pick a bowler, who would it be for you?
Current lot is pretty easy. You have to go to Adil Rashid. There's a clear difference between him and all other English bowlers right now. Uh, yeah, but overall, I don't know. I mean, if you are looking at their history, tough to say, especially in ODIs. But currently, I don't think anyone's better than Adil Rashid, because Jofra's injured. And he's been injured for a long time, that you don't even know that when he comes back and bowls, how effective would he be. Because in the IPL, you felt that he wasn't the same bowler yet. And you can understand so, because it takes time, and then he's picked up some injury once again. So at present, it has to be Adil Rashid.
Well, that's it from England's review, of course. And now it's time to move on to the team that came up with the first unexpected result of the tournament, and that happened against England. Of course, my favorite team, Nikhil Bhai's favorite team, Gurkirat's favorite team as well, Afghanistan. Fantastic tournament for them. I know fantastic seems like, probably they made it to the semis or something, but that's not the case. And they didn't have to be honest, to have a fantastic tournament. The way they performed, the way they fought game in, game out was very good to see. Again, I've also told this as well before. that a lot was expected off of them. Even in the last World Cup, they came close without really going over the line several times in the last World Cup, which is why a lot of us really wanted them to sort of go over the line this time around. But what we'd seen of them in the Asia Cup wasn't really as promising as we would have wanted to be, because it seemed like they still weren't the side that they could be, that they weren't playing to their potential. Thankfully, all of that came to the fore and beyond in the World Cup. It was a fantastic campaign for them. Let's just have the first graphic on, which is here, of course. There we go. In terms of how the campaign went along this time around, they initially played Bangladesh. The one game oh man, क्या यार पहले ही गेम पहला ही पॉइंट यही आ गया बताओ the one I just don't want to see the first and the eighth entry there, but yeah, we just have to talk about it. Bangladesh, unfortunately, a game that they should have won in Dharamshala, went on to lose. Second game against India, the the scoreline or the result might not really indicate that, but Afghanistan did bat as good as they could have probably ever. They scored 270 odd. Azmatullah Omarzai batted out of his skin to get some runs at the death. In fact, that was one of India's poorest death bowling performances, if you want to put it that way. Of course, it's not like they gave a lot of runs, but that's how good they have been at the death. And the third game, of course, versus England, 15th of October, Navratri. It was Delhi. And what a phenomenal game. I'll never forget that. We were just reeling from the India-Pakistan game. We were thinking about Navratri and Ahmedabad and all of that. And out of nowhere, Afghanistan come in and just show why they are such a good team, why they have so many skillful players. It started off with Gurbaz, playing that fantastic, coming up with that fantastic start up top that helped them, get that foundation. And then the middle order also took it forward and they got a competent score. If I'm not wrong, they scored about 280. Nikhil Bhai, was the score against England? 280 odd?
Yes, sir, around that only.
Yep. And England just completely fell apart trying to chase that down. They were never in contention to chase, barring that brief slip up when Harry Brooks seemed to take it away from them, but wasn't to be the case, unfortunately for them. That was also a good knock by Harry Brook, but yeah, didn't really get a lot of chances post that. Then came the only sort of blot for them, which was the game against New Zealand, where they were comprehensively beaten by them. That was in Chennai, a surface where they would have expected to do well. A lot of drop catches, a lot of missed opportunities there. Unfortunately, they had to just they had only themselves to blame there. And then they had a spurt of 3 wins, a hat trick that really no one saw coming. Once again against Pakistan, a clinical performance in Chennai, a fantastic chase, and it was so sort of heartening, so uh, good to see Afghan fans be so jubilant, and they were so thrilled to see how good they did, to see how good the team that did that is. Ibrahim Zadan, fantastic performance. Then something we'd also spoken about before, that Afghan batters haven't been good enough in the second innings. They haven't really been clinical enough while chasing. They clearly showed that they have the skills. Then Sri Lanka, then Netherlands, two more clinical performances that pretty much sealed their spot in the Champions Trophy. And then there was that Australia game. Let's just नहीं याद है भाई. अपने को भी याद नहीं है. That game doesn't exist. That date only doesn't exist, Nikhil bhai. Don't worry. And then finally they played South Africa in Ahmedabad. Again, a competent performance from them. They were able to take South Africa till the 47th over, till the 45th over, sorry, where they were still in the chase, 33 to win of 30. I remember telling that, I still felt that a wicket here, a wicket that they could have won. Peklokwayo ensured that wasn't to be the case with Fandi Dusan on the other side. But yeah, that was Afghanistan's campaign. Very, very, very heartening to see in terms of, their bowlers coming good, their openers coming good for them. The middle order, maybe not so much for me personally. I know others might agree to disagree there. But yeah, let's start with you, Nikhil Bhai, in terms of, how Afghanistan fared this time around. Your first thoughts. Did they meet your expectations? Were they good? Were they bad?
Nani, obviously they met my expectations and they beat England. No better side, no better time to beat people who teach cricket than to do it in a World Cup. And again, it was I think this thing that stood out the most for them, for me, is the clinical nature of the chases. Because very often you've seen sides lose steam or, lose track of what they actually have to do sometimes to just close the game out. I think with Afghanistan, you never saw that trouble. All of us will remember that Jonathan Trott whiteboard, के ये करना है, ये करना है, ये करना है, ये करना है. If only in Asia Cup somebody gave them that 38.1 wala information as simply as this one, it could have been so much more better. But that's okay. I'll still take this from Afghanistan in terms of, as you said, see, I mean, it's to go from 0 wins in a previous World Cup to this many and to look like a semis contender for a major part of it speaks volumes about how much the side has come through. Uh, so that is kudos to them and the entire management, and that there is a lot more scope to do well is even better because you know where the side can improve, if not immediately, but at least in the long run. You know the openers might want to just get better in terms of in chases. You know middle orders might want to just get better in terms of pacing their knocks, and of course you have a very good all-rounder who could potentially be a very common household name in few years to come. And yeah, there are issues with Nabi's batting, Mujib's form. Rashid going wicketless so often in this World Cup, something that you did not see coming, but it is still a thing that you can probably control in terms of get better at. So lots and lots of positives for me.
100% there, Nikhil. Bhai, Gurkirat, what about you in terms of how Afghanistan went about their business in the tournament? Happy with what you saw of them?
Very happy. I think if you look at that graphic that you had of their fixtures, the earliest that they got out of a game was versus Bangladesh, and that speaks volumes because against India you felt that after those 3 wickets there was a good partnership. Maybe if Kuldeep and Bumrah had not struck the way they did, Afghanistan could have reached 290, 300, and they scored with I mean, New Zealand scored 273, they scored 272. So that was they were one of those teams who did not get all out to India. So that sums up a lot about their effort. Easily, to not from not winning a game to being a contenders for the semi-final was a huge thing. And a lot of things that that they've done well and they can improve is just down to tactics, like how they use their players. So it's not that you feel that they need players who can who need better skills. You feel the skill part that that they are covering now, because last World Cup you felt a lot of their batters did not really know how to build an ODI innings. Now with Ibrahim Zadran and Gurbaz there, along with Azmatullah, you feel at least okay, that part is sorted. And I think to all of our surprises, Rahmat and Hashmatullah Shahidi both batted better than what we expected. Yes, they were still slow, but you know, I think those final strike rates are a reflection of some of the poor innings that they had. But in the matches that they won, they showed decent enough intent to stay with the rate. So a lot more. I'm not really sure to how long will Nabi play, because he's missed what, some 4 games that Afghanistan have ever played, 4 or 5. So maybe in 2 years' time they could sort of look at a player who can replace him, because Nabi, I felt, did the job of the fifth bowler or the sixth bowler very, very well. Is outstanding as the fifth or the sixth bowler. And yeah, some things will hurt, but better not to talk about them, because there have been so many positives and everything to take forward from here. I don't expect them to change the captain now, but we have had enough debates on how Shahidi needs to improve in terms of his tactics. But again, a controllable. See, it's far easier to improve on tactics than to improve on raw skills of batting and bowling. So you feel raw skills are still sorted. Raw skills are still sorted. You still need to see improve tactically. And Naveen ul Haq had announced retirement from ODIs after this World Cup, so they need to find out that who will be that third pacer for them, because you need a third proper pacer. Not on all decks you can go in with this heavy spin attack.
All right, a couple of interesting points that Nabi, of course, yeah, not a lot of time remaining for him, but I do feel that they have quite a few backups, ready in to sort of be groomed and make the jump to the bigger stage. Noor Ahmed, to be honest, could be a like for like replacement in the long term. He's shown that he has the batting abilities. I know Nikhil Bhai sort of probably might not agree that right now, but I feel there is. Oh,
I
thank you so
agree,
much.
agree, of course. Why not? भाई हमने नूर अहमद को काफी देखा है बैटिंग करते हुए.
क्योंकि अच्छा आप नहीं थे फिर, because yeah, under 19 में तो he was batting at number 7 for them, so he definitely can hold the bat. He's no monk with it, so for sure they have options. And from what I remember, there are a couple of other names as well. That is a part of their domestic setup that would that a lot of Afghan fans, I remember a lot of them online talking about the likes of Abdul Rahman, if I'm not wrong, Riaz Hassan, names that should be sort of brought in and given a couple of chances. Hopefully, we will see a few of them, if not all of them, soon enough. Going forward, of course. Let's quickly talk about what went wrong for Afghanistan. in the World Cup. The middle order, of course, didn't score as quickly as needed. Something we all also alluded to. Maybe they did do better than what was expected off of them, but that still doesn't sort of erase the fact that they were still slow. They were in fact the second slowest team, only after Bangladesh in the middle overs. They just couldn't get going. And again, it wasn't really it didn't really have much to do with the opponents or the opposition's bowling attack. It had more to do with them just not being able to rotate strike. The non-boundary strike rate was the lowest. They were not able to get those boundaries as often as required. This is where someone like an Azmatullah Umarzai really came in. He was a huge shot in the arm for them. He made sure that he was able to make up for all that slow starts in the death overs. So that was really good to see. And in an ineffective pace attack, to be honest, they didn't really even have too many pace options. Azmatullah Umarzai was the second pacer. I don't think Naveen and Fazal played too many matches together, if any, that is. Then Fazal, of course, towards the end, they sort of preferred Naveen over him, given the kind of services they were going to play at. Naveen now has also announced his retirement. So it'll be interesting to see how they sort of go about it going forward. In fact, in terms of percentages, Afghanistan bowled the highest percentage of overs of spin in this World Cup. This goes on to show how dependent they were on their spin attack. Also because they had three or sometimes even four frontline spinners playing for them. Then they also had someone like Rahmat Shah who could sort of just roll his arm over for those part-time leg spins. So that also didn't help. Lack of wicket-taking options. It's not that they didn't have wicket-taking bowlers. Unfortunately, they weren't amongst the wickets. Mujib's form was a concern. Like Nikhil Bhai said, ended up being a concern for them throughout the tournament. Rashid didn't get as many wickets, but again, that was a reflection of batters being more than happy to play him out instead of just going after him. Because I really
And
felt
drops
that, of
and
course,
drop catches.
100%, and drops, of course. So I wouldn't really put that against Rashid because he was very good, in pretty much throughout the tournament, not just a couple of games. The wicket tally might not really show that, but I was really happy with what I saw of him. Gurkirat, would you agree with that assessment in terms of how Rashid bowled? Like me, because I personally felt it had a lot to do with just batters trying to be defensive there. Or do you think Rashid could have done more to get those wickets?
No, he bowled well. There were a couple of games where he bowled well, but couldn't really, get wickets. There was the New Zealand game against Pakistan. Also, he bowled well. So you felt that he. I mean, in the India game, he only took 2 wickets, and you felt that what if he had been brought on earlier? Maybe there would have been something that he could have done. So, but that's something that is yet to get out of Afghanistan's DNA. You'd hope that happens. You can no complaints as such from Rashid. You just want that maybe Rashid and Nabi can both sort of get into the leadership group, and when the bowlers are not getting their lines or speeds right, can just come in and sort of be in their ears. I felt that maybe Muji was bowling a little too quickly whenever he was bowling in the power play. I felt some that even with Tikshana. So yeah, just these things maybe they can improve upon. And yeah, another thing that I had in my mind, but right now I can't recall. All of a sudden, I just had that point. But yeah, when I get that, I'll let you know.
100%, no worries there. Let's just quickly, of course, move on to what next for Afghanistan. Well, they'll, of course, have to find a replacement for Naveen ul Haq. Not a lot of space options. There is Fazal Haq Faruqi, and I'm forgetting who it was in the Asia Cup. Nikhil, if you could help me out with that. Who was a part of their Asia Cup
Farid
in
Malik.
terms. Yes,
Farid
Farid
Malik.
Malik. He's
Yeah.
another option there. But again, they'll really need to look out for frontline pacers because right now they just have stopgap options, stopgap replacements. So hopefully they'll be able to figure that out. There is Umarzai who can chip in, but you can't expect him to give you 10 overs or 4 overs in a T20 game day in day out. So they'll have to sort of take that into account. They'll need to find backups for Ahmed and Shahidi. This is more from a standpoint of them wanting to score quickly in the middle overs, because I can only imagine what they can do if they're also able to score in the middle overs. Up top, they've got Zadran and Gurbaz giving them strong starts. In the middle overs, even if they're able to score at 5, and then you've got someone like Azmat, someone like Nabi coming there, or even Rashid and Noor, who can sort of tonk a couple of sixes here, tonk a couple of sixes there, get them over 300 day. I mean, if not day in day out, more often than not, and that'll be great. That'll be great for them. That'll be great to watch because I I want to believe they have the bowling attack to be able to defend 300 a 300 plus score more often than not. So maybe finding replacements. This is where grooming more players, giving more middle order batters a chance would be important, would be imperative, so that in the long term they will be sort of in a good state to ensure that they have enough options coming in. Better FTT planning, something we spoke about while talking about Netherlands as well. This just goes without saying, because a lot of their tours have gotten cancelled. They have a tour coming up now in Jan against India. They were supposed to play. They were scheduled to play India in July. That was unfortunately cancelled so that India could tour West Indies. Which I still don't know how did that make sense to the BCCI. But let's hope that the January tour goes on as scheduled. That'll be great to watch. And Gurkirat, anything you want to add in terms of what next for Afghanistan? What you would be expecting from them?
Just one thing that I had, maybe that they could see how to use Ikram Ali Khil. Maybe he could come a little top of the order if that's possible. Maybe at four, but that would mean that one of Rahmat or Shahidi will go out. And then see, what do they have to do about Najibullah, because they dropped him after one game in this World Cup, and he was in poor form even in the Asia Cup. So maybe look at him, see what they want to do. There was one other point that I still can't recall that I had in my mind. I really don't know, how I've lost that, because I felt that it could, it could be about the what next part, but it's just slipped out of my mind and I really can't recall.
No worries, no worries. We get that. It's one of those things. Absolutely no worries. Let's just quickly wrap up this review. Just one comment there. Prasad Samhadri, we'll just take that before we move on. Azmatullah Umar is at Hardik Pandya for Afghanistan. Oh, that's an interesting comparison. Nikhil bhai, do you want to chip in there?
The fair भी है. Again, you're not going to compare exact like for like and numbers and numbers wise, but he's doing a similar role. Not used as much, not trusted as much as Hardik, but slowly and steadily he'll get there. तो आपका थर्ड पेसर हो जाएगा वो अच्छे से.
So is he going to Gujarat Titans the next season? All right, secret it is. Let's quickly now move on to the last team, of course, the last non-semi-finalist, the only one that you could probably say were in contention for the most part, but unfortunately didn't really make it through. They were a part of my team to go to watch out for in terms of their high variance gameplay and all of that. Yeah, I mean they just sort of played as typical as they could get in that sense. Gurkirat, let's start with Pakistan. Let's just understand first your first thoughts. I mean, let's get your first thoughts in terms of what you expected off of them, and do you think they sort of performed as per your expectations?
I did not expect them to make the semis once Naseem was out. And I think it's good that they've not snuck into the semis because the performances weren't there. Uh, you had they snuck into the semis, again, a lot of cracks that they have in the team would have been papered over, like it happened in the T20 format, because they did not they reached the finals, but they did not have the greatest of campaigns otherwise. If you look at it, how the whole thing went. So now that they've not reached it, they would be forced to do some changes, and they will not be able to paper over the cracks. Uh, you would have never thought that a subcontinent or an Asian team is playing without a spin attack. It's that spin attack is as good as non-existent. So there is that, and all the issues that we had discussed in the preview to the Asia Cup, in the preview to the World Cup, they all came to the fore, right? Uh, if you could bring up those graphics, I think it's better if we could go with that graphic, because we'll not have to show, not this one, the one about what went wrong. We will come to that later. The Yeah, because Naseem injury I felt was the turning point. So this is where I felt okay. Their chances of making the semis have really come down, because he was the one who could have allowed for some control, which I think would have made a difference to Babar's captaincy as well. Like, he would have not tried to get overs out of here and there or from a few players, so that would have been avoided. There was a lack of wickets in the power play, only nine, and three of them came versus Bangladesh. Three of them came versus Bangladesh. So that basically means in the remaining 8 games they had only 6 wickets in the power play. So that was going to hurt you. Spin attack completely non-existent. These numbers speak for themselves. Average of 78 strike rates and that economy rate. So there's hardly any control on offer. And you felt with the top three there wasn't enough intent versus spin. Again, had Abdullah Shafiq not scored runs in that Sri Lanka game, they would have probably by the end of the third or fourth game gone back to the gone back to the the opening combination of Imam and Fakar with which they had started off with. So a lot of things just kept unraveling for them, and to PCB's credit, they did not make things easy for their own team with press releases, etc., etc. Even their own media releasing chats and everything. At times, you had to feel for Babar, the captain, and his own batting did not help his cause. So, yeah, a lot of things that could have gone wrong, which you could have seen going wrong for them, they just went wrong.
All right, Nikhil bhai, Gurkira just basically saying that Murphy's Law manifested for Pakistan. But in terms of what you expected off of Pakistan and Kudrat Ka Nizam and all of that, I already see a couple of comments, so couldn't help but bring that up. But again, did you expect them to perform better than what they did? Or you think they've sort of performed as per expectations?
I think they were fairly where you think they would be. Again, they are again a side who I feel again it doesn't always come nicely with them that you have to be really mindful of who you are playing, where you are playing, and how what you are getting out of it. Something that Paji has also discussed in the past about uh, whoever you are playing. Are you if you are going to keep playing Naseem Shah everywhere, you're not going to help your side learn more about Naseem and also the backup plan for him. So it is one thing that they tried doing it and they lost a series, which meant they went back to the main players. But it goes down with Pakistan and England to the kind of structure that they have in terms of playing a lot of ODIs, playing a lot of ODIs against strong sides on good wickets. So वहाँ पे if you keep playing that, you'll realize that okay, there is this thing to be pushed at, there is this thing to be better at. Because you look at a lot of sides, South Africa missed and it Nokia, but they still found a way. Australia, okay, they didn't miss anyone much. You had India missing Hardik Pandya, key player, balance out of the side. You have to play 6-5 combination. They still found a way. But with Naseem Shah out, everybody kind of knew that it will not be easy. And the fact that they then had to bowl Haris Rauf in power play, which is something that I still don't get to. That why would you keep sticking to that ploy every single game when you've seen it not working for you? But you have to do that because you haven't done enough without that player or without that tournament. That okay, what if you don't have Naseem? Okay, what if you don't have Rauf? What if you don't have Shine? You have never thought of that. You never planned to have any contingency plan that okay, these are my next set of players. Okay, Hassan Ali came in, Mohammad Naseem came in. Mohammad Naseem still bowled so much better, used the reverse swing bit well. But then if you played enough in the past with them, you have to just have that system in place that okay, these are my players, these are my roles. Again, you can't replace each and every one of them, but you still have to have some hope. So I think that's where they'll feel that with spin department as well. Paji touched upon the usage of Nawaz. You go back to what is the need to get back Shadab in that last game? It I mean, you're just getting back a player for the sake of it. What did he tell you or show you in the nets that you felt that he has to play this game? So again, it's just relying on one set of people to and you thinking कि भाई उनमें से आप सब कुछ निचोड़ लोगे. It will not happen. They will also get jaded. They will also get tired because you are just pushing them कि भाई आप हर situation में हर game में जो भी करना है आपको ही करना है. So that's where I think they'll have to develop a bigger pool of players. कि Saud Shakil came in, did well, but he wasn't part of the plan. सलमान अली यादव का आपने क्या यूज किया? तो hardly anything. So again, you had to pull Iftikhar Chacha in the middle against Australia, and it worked for you, which is great. Else you would have chased it even massive score. So again, all of these things are something that are again controllable in terms of the management, the setup. That okay, this is the unit, this is how we want to play, and this is how they'll go about play. If it doesn't come off, it doesn't come off. But if one player going out of your setup means that you don't have anything to rely on, because they didn't have anything. Rof didn't come good. Shine did not take wickets with the new ball, and the spin department was any which ways bare. So I think the blame has to lie a lot more on planning and plotting there also, because execution hona nahi hona. I mean, they considered 400, then they still won the game. But that is something that you can't rely or trust. Ke bhai, this will always happen. That Fakar will come. He will come good. He is your one guy. But then how do you take a call on him? What do you want to go? Where do you want to go with it? Rizwan in some games played very well, but in some games you felt that he was in a hurry. But why was that the case? So in one game they promoted Iftikhar when they could have simply sent Shadab or Shakil in. Again, all of these are, as Padi said, controllables that can be taken care of. I think Pakistan did not quite take care of them enough, and they are where they are at the right spot, I feel.
Interesting, but that's as comprehensive as it can get. It almost seemed like
I
a rant,
actually
to be
feel,
honest.
I actually feel, I actually feel, Afghanistan should have been higher up on the table,
That's
because
true.
I still doubt if I still doubt if Pakistan would have chased 400 if it was a full game.
Interesting. All
So
right. That New Zealand
there
game
is
was
that.
probably, yeah, Kudrat probably showering its whatever little blessings on Pakistan there. But a couple of questions before we move on to what's next for Pakistan. A couple of changes that they had to make midway into the tournament. One was form related, the other, I mean, both were form related, to be honest. One was Wasim coming in, and the other was Fakhar Zaman coming in. Nikhil bhai, let's start with you there. Both the changes, do you think in hindsight they should have started the tournament, given that for Wasim, because Naseem had already been ruled out, do you think they could have probably given him a shot earlier? And with Fakhar, he was coming into the tournament with, absolutely no form whatsoever. So were
Yeah.
Pakistan vindicated that way?
See, I don't think both of those cases are as strong as you feel that they could have started with them. It is something that you try. Okay, this is our combination, and it did not work out. And then you just compounded that by having too many people who are not coming good. So that's why it looks even worse in hindsight. कि भाई अरे एक प्लेयर नहीं था पर और किसी से वो एग्जीक्यूट भी नहीं हुआ. But I think a lot of captaincy, form of spinners, usage of people also came into play there. So I think I'll say Fakar ko not playing is okay, and it's an extreme view. With people like Fakar, when they come off, you look stupid कि इसको कैसे नहीं खिलाया. But when they don't come off for 10 games, you're like इसको क्यों खिला रहे हो? So it is always going to be that extreme with players who are as volatile as Fakar. And with Masim, I think it's a fair call. They started with Hassan Ali because that was their order in their mind. So that's where they went to. And maybe had Osama Mir taken that catch, who knows where they would have ended.
Fair enough. Gurkara, let's just quickly move on to, of course, what's next for Pakistan. And there we go. That's a graphic there.
Yeah, so as you can see, they had three players, Shafiq, Saud Shakil, and Osama Mir, come into the World Cup with less than 10 ODIs. Now, that is not ideal at all. This is something, that we are touching upon, that those Netherlands series, maybe these guys could have played games. Saud Shakil, I think, only played one game, which was in the Afghanistan series. I don't think Saud Shakil played a game in Asia Cup, or maybe if he did, it would have been one game. I'm not sure of this. They kept playing Salman Ali Aga over there, and then they played Saud Shakil from game one. Uh, Similarly for Shafiq, and there was another player in the squad which was Mohammad Harris. So that makes it four players who really did not have a lot of game time. And I remember in the preview saying that could they have played Fahim Ashraf or had Fahim Ashraf in the squad instead of maybe Mohammad Harris or one of Abdullah Shafiq. I think in hindsight, I can say maybe if Fahim Ashraf would have been there, it wouldn't have really made up a lot of difference because there wasn't much swing available. So there is that, and they need to find a proper spinner. I don't think they can drop a player like Shadab, because at 7 you need an all-rounder at 7 who can provide you with some sort of balance. But that control needs to be a lot better than what it is right now. So there is that, and then there's so much being spoken on the batting approach of the top three. You just feel that they don't know how to bat in a manner that what they do. You just feel that Imam cannot take risks. You feel that even Babar will get stuck at one point of time, and Babar gets stuck versus off spin. So yeah, that top three needs to be multi-dimensional. Would now will they have a change of personnel there, as in will they drop Imam and stick with Abdullah Shafiq, Fakar and Babar there, or will they again have Imam there and ask him to work on his skills? I don't know, but they really need that top three to be multi-dimensional. If they think that Babar cannot take those risks, then maybe when they are looking at a big score, or when they're looking to chase a big score, or when they are batting on a very flat wicket where probably making the power play count is valuable, or you really have to get a good start, maybe promote someone else then at number 3. Go down that route of trying to have a pinch hitter, because you cannot be so predictable in your batting plans that even the opposition isn't in pressure. You will never see opposition feel like, okay, they could take away the game in the first 10-15 overs, especially if fucker's gone. So there has to be some surprise element, and that right now is not there with any facet of the game for Pakistan.
All right, it's time to move on to comments. Let's just take a couple of comments. Of course, it's been a fairly long preview review, not preview, review. Mind you, कल semi-finals है भाई, पहला match नहीं है. But yeah, let's just take a couple of comments before we wrap the review up. It's been great bringing it to you guys. I know I haven't mentioned it enough during the during the review itself. I don't know why do I keep saying preview. Maybe I'm just deep down being still hopeful कि भाई और लंबा चलाओ World Cup को. But नहीं भाई, काफी ज़्यादा काम तो हो गया है यहाँ पे. But yeah, let's just take Adnan Shahid's comment. And guys, yeah, please do make sure before that, please make sure you're hitting the like button if you haven't already. And also, please do subscribe to us if you haven't already. Yep, there we go. Adnan asks us, or rather tells, there are extreme views on Babar, the captain. Some people think he's the one responsible here, and some think he's as good as his team. Your views, Paji?
I don't think anytime one player can be responsible for the results of any team. We have seen tactically bad captains get good results because of the player quality that they have. So of course the quality of the team is questionable, but at the same time you feel that at times Babar has not been able to catch the pulse of the game, or not have those, like the South Africa game is a good example. The fields for Tabrez Shamsi, I mean that's very poor. Some of the bowling changes, to in that Afghanistan game, you felt that whenever there was pressure, he just wanted to get an over out of Shadab, which would lead to a boundary, or one of the not, or one of the spinners. I think it's not Shadab, it was Usama Mir, because Shadab got concussion. So there is that, and then the promotion of Iftikhar versus South Africa. So not the person solely responsible, but yes, area a lot to improve.
Fair enough. And speaking of Shadab, Adnan also goes on to ask, why do you think Shadab has regressed as an ODI bowler? He started in 2017 as a specialist bowler and was good in his first 2 years. Maybe he's playing too many T20 leagues and also lack of first class or long format games. Nikhil bhai, you could probably take this up. Agree with
Just
him there?
just a bit before Nikhil answers, it's not just playing the T20 leagues; it's playing those T20 leagues with injury. It's playing those leagues with injury, because I've had analysts, or someone who's been a part of the management of Islamabad United. Also, you could see it. I think in the last PSL or the PSL before that, that he was not completely bowling fit, and he was still playing. So there is that bit as well. He's played. I think he's played T20s or PSL with an injury in his hamstring, or maybe something in the leg. So that bit was also there.
100%. That is a good point. He did play almost all of last season with that niggle and really seemed about out of sorts in terms of, how you could see him sort of wincing in pain time and again. But yeah, Nikhil bhai, you were saying.
And I think he is the answer is there in the question itself in terms of get some time away from T20. It's something even Haris Rauf can do. We've discussed this in the past as well about sometimes when you play too much of one format, it doesn't help you get more options for the longer format. So that's where you will feel that okay, maybe this will help, and it should, because logically that's what you'd expect even from former players as an advice or a solution to UK. If you're not able to build control or stuff, that the best place to do it, go back to domestic cricket, play a longer format kind of games enough so that you are able to learn more about your body, so that you know okay, what is it that can work for you, whether it is sticking to just looking for control, or you can change something that can help you get a lot of wickets. But that call has to be taken quickly, and it has to be taken in time, because there is a lot of cricket happening. There is a PSL, there is a T20 World Cup, there is a Champions Trophy, there is a World Cup. It's not stopping. So you'll have to take a call, take a pause. Abhi ye karna hai. Go back, play this system, play outside, play county, whichever, whatever helps, get you better, in better shape and in better awareness about your own game.
All right. One last comment before we wrap this up. Prasad Samhadri asks us, should Pakistan now invest more in Usama Mir or Shadab? Gurkirat, you could probably answer this. And yeah, let's wrap it up post that.
don't think those two players are comparable, because Shadab has decent enough all round value. Shadab has a very good value as a spin hitter in the T20 side as well. We saw Pakistan use that quality when they were playing that tri series, I think in New Zealand, where Bangladesh was the third team. And it's something again that we had discussed on our show, and then you saw Pakistan execute that. So maybe they could invest. They should invest in Osama Mir if they feel there is enough raw quality and raw talent, but not at Shadab's spot. Maybe in place of Nawaz they can do it, or maybe as uh, in place one of the pacers. But see, Shadab, good or bad, is still Pakistan's best bet for a bowling all rounder or a batting all rounder, or as someone who can bat at 6-7. Do they want to go back at Imad Wasim in place of Nawaz? I don't know. Maybe they can look at the PSL, look at his performances, and see, if that is something they can work with.
All right. Yep. It is time to wrap up the review now. It's been a 2 hour long session. Something all of us would have loved to do, and something all of us did love doing. Was great bringing the analysis to you guys in terms of how the teams did, how the teams fared. And my Netherlands probably also deserved a top four spot there. If not Netherlands, at least Afghanistan probably. You never know. Funniest things have happened, and hopefully we were hoping for something like that to happen. Tomorrow, of course, is the first semi-finals. It is India, New Zealand. It is Wankhede. It is Mumbai. You can see all of India right now just painted blue. All of us are looking forward to it, and all of us are also probably just all of us just want to heave a sigh of relief tomorrow when Virat Kohli faces 10 ball, because there's already information coming out about Virat Kohli's next sessions and this and that, and people are already taking to social media to react to it as usual. So yeah, tomorrow make sure you tune in at 1:25 p.m. sharp. It'll of course be Nikhil Bhai. There'll also be Gurkira. There will be Anirudh Suresh as well. They will be taking you through the game. There'll also be a mid innings review, and of course a post game review. And we'll have a fan cam coming out the day after. Don't forget to tune in at 8 a.m. to check that out as well. We've got a classics episode that's come out today. It is about the 2007 World Cup final, a story that not a lot of people remember. Not a lot of people were even probably there to watch it live then, because most of our audience tends to be around the 18 to 25 age. A fantastic story about how the game went on even post 7 o'clock in the night when there were absolutely no lights. There was complete chaos there, and yeah, it was a fascinating story. So do
I
check that
don't
out.
remember any such World Cup.
ये सही है
I
भाई.
don't remember any such World Cup. Chalo.
ये सही है. ये
By the
सही
way,
है.
tomorrow I am back as host come expert. So I'm really looking forward to these days, these
Yes,
shows.
सही
I think
है.
both the semi-finals. I'm both the host and the expert. So maza aayega.
Arey, look at that. Look at that. Gurkirat's already looking forward to the semi-finals for personal reasons, though. But yeah, as long as you are excited, that's all we care about, irrespective of the reasons. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, make sure you've hit the like button if you haven't already. And also, please do subscribe to us. Share it with your friends as well if you haven't already. Thank you so much for coming in. Have a great day. Have a great night. And a great night. And let's also hope, for all the Team India fans at least, that India wins. For all the New Zealand team fans, of course, let New Zealand also win. I can't be biased here, already receiving a lot of flack for yesterday's, RCB bias. So yeah, 100%. Thank you so much. Let's hope for a great game tomorrow. That's it from us. Good night. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Chakde.
And yep. All right. Bye-bye.